Okay, so I'm here today with Mark Levers, who is a friend of mine and is a performing artist and a martial artist and an educator. And Mark has had experience learning the Alexander technique now for quite a while. And I wanted to just ask him a few questions about that so he can share his insights. So, Mark, welcome. Let's start by saying, what led you to try the Alexander technique?
Hmm. Hi, Ben. Yeah, thank you for having me. Um, what led me to the Alexander technique? Well, it's a great question. I was really lucky. I still remember you were the one who introduced me to it, Ben. I still remember the context because I think we were playing a gig, and I was in a lot of discomfort, and you obviously noticed that, and hence you made the suggestion. And for me, it was um at that point in my life, it was a I needed anything to improve my lot, really. Um, yeah, so that was the introduction. Mm,
Okay. And what sort of motivated you to give it a try? Like, what were you experiencing? You mentioned discomfort. If you
mm,
sort of were to take inventory of where you were at that point in your life and what
mm.
you perhaps felt you could improve on, what would that be?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Well, my my main income is as a professional drummer, and uh, for a long time I'd been practicing really, really bad physical habits in my playing. Um, and the best summary I can give it is that back then I would have been only 28, 29, I think. And my my regular physio, who I still see and catch up with back then, said, well, you have the physical age of someone twice your actual age. You're in a real bad way. And I thought, well, gee, that says it all.
Hmm.
Not a good assessment, and not something you want to hear when you're not even 30.
Yeah.
So
No, that must have been quite discouraging.
uh yeah, yeah. But simultaneously um it was a wake up call to I knew I was heading down
Hmm.
a path that if I didn't deviate, it was a for me a dilemma between, do I keep doing music which I love and don't want to give up, or and wreck my health potentially and have to retire early, or do I stop now? What
Hmm.
do I do?
Hmm.
So yeah.
How are you feeling about those choices?
Um Now or back then?
Oh, back then.
Oh, back then. Uh I just thought, well, just sink or swim, and I just decided to keep swimming. Something would surely come up. Um, yeah, yeah. So in my head, there's always surely a solution available. It's just a matter of finding the right one.
Yep.
So that was the headspace, really. Like, I don't think I could have coped any other way.
Yeah.
Mm.
That's an extremely resourceful approach to take to it, I think. Um, and so what was actually going on physically? I mean, you said you had your physio said that you had the health of someone twice your age. How did that show up in your day-to-day life and in your playing?
Uh, I had low levels of chronic pain by that point, and but I remember by what I looked up, chronic pain is it had been habitualized and was constant,
Mm.
and I'd go in and out of not being able to sleep on my back, for instance. It was just too painful, and I'd wake up during the night because I'd roll onto my back, and it was, yeah, but, oh gee, whoops, I've irritated it again.
Mm.
And it wasn't just my back, it was my shoulders, wrists, knees, ankles, hips, neck. Yeah, my whole body. I look, you pretty much name the joint, and there was pain in that area I was experiencing.
Right.
Mm,
Right.
mm.
Okay. Um, and so we had a bit of a chat about it, and then I think we had a session. Um, what was your initial experience?
Um, ah, it was really, I found it really confronting personally, in a good way, in that I knew. Um, if there was going to be any effect, it would probably be I'd probably notice something. And um, I come back to that saying the Chinese have that I learned through my martial arts stuff I do, that you have to eat bitter medicine sometimes, and the taste is awful, but you know it's good for you.
Hmm.
So I still remember being I remember being knocked flat. I just I was really relaxed in a way I hadn't experienced or had no relation to, and I just had to sit and rest for 20 minutes. I was really tired, but
Mm.
in a way that was really, oh, wow,
Mm.
what is this?
And what was
Mm.
how do you relate that to bitterness? What's the bitter taste of that?
Oh, the bitter taste of it. What I now know of is a lot of my muscles letting go, and they were desperately holding on, um, because that was what was normal for me, and in the act of letting go, that really, um, it yeah, it was physically uncomfortable. It wasn't where I thought this is where I normally relax, or I'm not used to my body doing this. What's going on? And it was
Mm.
really, yeah, it was like, oh, it doesn't feel safe, but I know I'm safe.
Mm.
So, hmm, yeah. And then, I still remember that moment. I was curious before, and then I was like, this is something really interesting, um, because not many things I've experienced have that kind of effect, um, and certainly not from the first go.
Mm.
So that was the thing that really stuck out. Mm.
Hmm. Okay. Yeah, that sounds like it was quite a change from the normal, not your regular, not your regular TV station.
Yeah. But then experiencing what's normal anyway. It's all subjective to the time and the period. Um, and I knew looking at myself in the mirror, I knew my posture was really stooped, and I didn't know what to do about it really. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
All right. So we had the first session. Maybe if you might not even remember exactly the time frames, but if you were to say the first 10 or a dozen sessions, what changes did you notice in yourself over that time?
Oh, well, the first 10, hmm, I started to get a sense of maybe how things could let go. Much to my surprise, they actually let go.
Hmm.
Um, and I was surprised because um, I didn't know those areas particularly were even tight in the first place.
Uh-huh.
It felt normal. So yeah,
Mm.
yeah, it was pretty unbelievable at the time. I thought, wow, that's what is normal anymore? I don't
Yeah. And what were the
know.
effects outside of the actual lessons? So you have your lesson, but then you go out in the world and you play and play music, you do martial arts, you do whatever
Mm.
else. What did anything change around those sort of first 10 lessons?
Uh, I started to feel like my usual, um, you know, the habits I have for playing and for practicing and moving in general were, um, it gave me the hint that maybe I'm not doing something quite right here. Um, and how do I actually replace what I'm doing with something else? Um, yeah, yeah, yeah. It was like, uh, other than that, I think back then my habits were so strong, they were just overwhelmingly powerful and automatic.
Mm.
Yeah.
Mm.
Mm.
In terms of those insights, the insight that maybe you were doing something that wasn't right or wasn't serving you, and there were other options. How did you feel about that realization?
Uh, Simultaneously really relieved and frustrated. Relieved that here's something that here's something that seems to really give me another option to actually, you know, really give me another chance, so I don't have to quit music. Um, in that sense, and frustrated because I thought, well, if it's as simple as I'm simply, I just need to let a few things go. Oh, gee, what have I been doing all my
Mm,
life?
mm.
Yeah, yeah. But then, yeah, it was always a case of sometimes the simple things are the hardest things to realize or to do.
Yeah. I'm reminded of that, what's been told to me as a Chinese saying proverb that, the best time to plant a tree is 20 years ago, and the second best time is now. So,
Yeah, 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 yeah. That's so true. Mm.
yeah. Okay. And so did you notice any change to your kind of your symptoms, your pain, the limitations that it was placing on your playing and your martial arts, in the first, I don't know, 10-ish sessions? Were you already feeling some effects?
I couldn't yet take it into um those activities, but I noticed I noticed it during the Alexander technique lessons that yeah, um I know these habits of mine. If I'm moving my arm to play my cymbal or I'm aiming to throw a punch, that really hurts.
Mm,
Um and I could recognize and see the pain from a different angle.
hmm.
Um and that was a very interesting step change.
Okay. Well, tell me more about the new angle that you had on that pain.
Um,
Mm.
hmm, that's a great question. It's a great question. It's difficult to describe um it's just a perception thing. The
Hmm.
perception shifted and awareness became um much more specific to the areas involved, not just a general dull discomfort. Um,
Okay.
and every now and then there will be um, a very sharp, like a knife, in a specific area if I really overdid it in any area, which um, oh, we've all done that to some degree, I think.
Mm,
But the the dull ache itself, I became aware of from the absence of it.
mm,
So that's the angle.
mm,
That's the angle. Um, it had been so normalized for years. I yeah, wasn't aware of it.
hmm.
Yeah,
Mm.
yeah.
All right, great. So now, how would you say, if you were sort of summarize the difference between where you are now and where you were before you started, how has it
Mm.
affected your performance in music?
Oh, it's night and day, night and day. So one of the most interesting things I found out about halfway between the first 10 lessons and now, so maybe about a year and a half ago, 2 years, um, that I had no idea what I was doing. I was holding my breath when I was playing. Um, and uh, now I still can fall into that habit if I'm really focusing hard and having a good time. But um, if I'm coming back to remembering to breathe when I'm playing along, um, I can really I can really hear the tone of my instrument in real time, very, very
Mm,
clearly. It's um it's like my ears of rubber gloves taken off them if they were hands. You know how you can't feel too much if you've got
mm,
stuff covering these bits, but it's like that was lifted from my ears. Um, Similarly with my eyes, you know, if you're not breathing, you kind of, oh gee, really tired all the time. And it's like, oh wow, I can see a lot more detail
Mm,
as well. And I was shocked at um how much of my sensory information had changed.
mm,
Um, from even that point to now, and it's still changing.
mm.
So yeah.
Excellent. And what about martial arts? Has it made any difference to your martial arts?
Ah, enormous, enormous. By eliminating the things I wasn't doing very well, um, all the feedback from my sparring partners and buddies, they're all like, "Wow, you've gotten way stronger." I'm like, actually, I feel weaker, but I'm probably just coordinating better.
Mm,
And um, a lot of the really um, long range strikes, for example, a lot of the um, forms that really they're physically quite demanding. Um, Rather than pushing through it and pushing through the pain and thinking this is how the training should go, it's more um, I don't feel pain when I'm doing that stuff. And I feel fatigue, but that's a different sensation. And um, and again, I realized the same thing with my martial arts training. I'm actually breathing while I'm able to practice. I was also wasn't breathing when I was doing a lot of that too.
mm,
Mm.
mm. Yeah, I mean, Alexander, as you probably know, was known as the breathing man for quite a while in his early career. Um, all right, so what about your just general daily life? I mean, has that, Mark's going, getting a coffee, hanging out with friends, how has that changed, if at all?
Oh, I can just enjoy the simple stuff so much more. And I think it's reasonable to say that um, in the absence of pain, I can enjoy stuff. So yeah, my enjoyment and satisfaction levels are just much higher. Well-being is excellent.
Hmm.
Um, and yeah, yeah. So many of my social interactions are just I've gotten a lot of feedback um, over the last 3 years that um, I seem to be more present in the room and I'm able to hold a conversation better, things like
Mm,
that.
mm,
Um, or I'm much more cheerful.
mm.
I'm less grumpy. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Um, yeah. And what about just, overall physical health and pain levels?
Mm. Well, I'm older in years, but I'm younger in stature, I
Hmm.
suppose.
You sort of mentioned about being more present. Are there any other aspects of physical, mental, or emotional well-being that you feel have, improved or you've benefited from?
Uh, my ability to stay focused on task and not get irritated by things. Um, I find myself being much more unflappable,
Mm,
and um, yeah, yeah, and it makes sense if if someone's already in pain and frustrated at the pain and grumpy, that's much harder to deal with anything else on top of
mm.
that.
That's so true. That is so true. I feel I have the same experience of that. When I'm in a really good space, I notice with my kids, if I don't really get pain anymore. But if I've been stressed and I'm just a little bit wound up physically, that I'm, less
Mm.
patient. So it's been really good for me to overall be sort of miles ahead of where I was and have the benefits of that emotionally. What was the most surprising benefit you experienced from the Alexander technique?
How familiar it was, yet unfamiliar simultaneously
Uh-huh.
from previous things I've already tried out or done.
Okay. And how does the Alexander technique compare then to other methods or treatments? You know, if you go back to the state that you were in originally, I think you said you were seeing a physio. You may have tried
Mm,
things. You might have seen a medical doctor. I myself tried. I tried, and this is not to knock physios at all. But I tried a physio and didn't really help me. And I tried acupuncture and massage, and a lot of people get a lot of
mm.
benefits from those things. And maybe it's sort of horses for courses. But did you try some other things? And how did Alexander technique compare?
Yeah, yep, yep. If I further add to the point of it was simultaneously familiar yet unfamiliar to other things, those other things I mean are things like my music practice, my playing, relating it to how I experience those things, and so radically different to um, times that I've done a lot of magnesium bath floating,
Hmm.
a lot of massage myself, a little bit of acupuncture here and there, a lot of physios, a lot of GPs, um, and it's like the AT work was um, it had similar elements of all those things, yet it was radically different in how it achieved results.
Hmm.
Mm.
Can you unpack that at
So
all?
I think it took a more whole of body and a whole of mind approach and wrapped it into one complete package. It didn't separate any element.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
I would say that's the one thing.
Yeah. Got it. All right. So, what advice would you give to someone who's considering trying the Alexander technique?
Um, oh, have an open mind, give it a go. You never know what might happen.
Hmm.
Um, and it's always good to try things.
Yep. And so you're a bit of an investor, Mark, in a financial sense. But how would Alexander technique costs money and it costs time, and both money and
Mm,
time, are a cost. So, and our attention is a cost, and how much we emotionally investing things is a cost. So you've
mm.
invested in those ways, and how would you rate your investment in Alexander technique?
Oh, it's priceless. Um, they say time is money, but really, money is something you can make as much of or as little of as you like. But once you've spent your time, you don't get it back.
Hmm.
And simultaneously to looking after myself financially, the other pillar that's so crucial
Hmm.
from my point of view is one's health.
Hmm.
And if one's quality of life is really looked after, um, then you've got the best amount of time available to going forward.